Okay, today we are going to show you how to make green chili chicken stew. Shh, I'm talking to myself, sweetie. All right, here are the ingredients. First, we need a large stock pot, however big for however much you want to make. I'm using the biggest one because we're gonna make a ton. We'll need some onions, some garlic, some baby red potatoes, a bunch of tomatillos, a few serranos, jalapenos, Roma tomatoes. We've got some poblanos and some Anaheim chilies. Then we'll also need some cumin, some Mexican oregano, salt and pepper, and a bunch of chicken broth. If you prefer, you can use veggie broth. We're using chicken bone broth, but you can use the cheap chicken broth. It doesn't matter. This is just supposed to be healthy and have more protein or something. So anyway, that is the basic ingredients. Now we're gonna go through how we put it all together. So the first thing we wanted to do is just rinse off, scrub all of the peppers, all of the tomatoes. We don't have to worry about the onions, potatoes, and garlic right now, but we get all these cleaned up, and also the tomatillos. But just in case you haven't worked a lot with tomatillos, let me just kind of show you. Now, a good tomatillo doesn't have to be the biggest tomatillo. The one thing you want to look for is make sure that the skin, the little husk, is starting to come off. If the skin's really tight, this one's a little tighter, but it's still coming off. If it's loose, that means it's ripe enough. If it's super, super skin tight on the tomatillo, then it's not quite ripe. You can still use it if that's all they have, but they're just not quite ripe. So they don't have to be huge, but you do want to make sure you take off the husk, and then it's really kind of sticky. So you will want to scrub the sticky off. Now we're gonna be roasting all of these, just like all the peppers, tomatoes, all the tomatillos. We're gonna be roasting them out on the barbecue. That's Heath's job. So my job is just to get it all cleaned up. So we just want to do this with all of our little tomatillos and get the sticky part off, and then they will be good to roast. Okay, one ingredient I forgot to tell you about is carrots. You can just get some whole carrots and slice them up, or you can buy the baby carrot. I like to buy something already pre-cut. Carrots are not my favorite thing to play with. So anyway, a couple of carrots, or some shredded carrots, or some sliced up carrots. We're gonna add a bunch of carrots. So that's the last ingredient that I forgot to tell you. Okay, bye.
We're roasting these peppers.
So then you can just grill all the peppers, tomatoes, tomatillos until they're a little bit charred on all the sides. These haven't started yet. And if you don't want to grill them, you don't have to. You can always just put them on a cookie sheet lined with foil or parchment paper and stick them in under broil in your oven and just keep turning them until they're all kind of charred, because we're just going to let them sweat a little bit after this.
And you want the skin to lift up.
And then after that, we're going to peel all the skins off so we don't have skins in our soup. Okay, the peppers are charred. All the peppers are charred. Now we're going to sweat them out.
Good look. We're all kind of let their skins loose. So these are hatch green chili or Anaheim chili. Whatever you can find. You see it boil in there. And juice. Serranos. Jalapenos. And poblanos. Don't worry about the blackness. All that comes off, and a little bit in the soup just makes it taste great. Just not a whole bunch. And set it to the side, and cover it with aluminum foil so that they'll sweat for about 15 minutes. Get a pair of gloves and start taking the skins off. And next we'll do the tomatillos and the tomatoes, and you just really do that until you start to see the juice begin to boil and it cooks them through a little bit. And they loosen up, and the skins will come off the tomatoes. You don't have a ton of tomato skins, and it makes it really delicious.
Okay, we got all the tomatillos and tomatoes on now, and they are just going to roast for, I don't know, 10 minutes or
minutes.
so, and we'll just keep turning them to char them. That way it makes the skins.
You'll start to see up here where the stem was that the juice will start to boil, and that'll kind of indicate that they're loosened up inside.
And it'll get a little blackened on some of the
You
sides.
see they're pretty firm right now, but they'll loosen up real good. And these skins on the tomatoes will begin to split pretty quick.
They'll curl. So it'll curl up, and then we'll pull all that skin off. Tomatillos, we don't take the skins off. They kind of stay attached, but
take this
tomatoes
little-
we do.
Take that little hard stem
make
out.
sure you
and then
take the
pour it
stem
on.
out, which I did on every single one of these. Tomatoes skins are bubbling up, looking a little bit charred. That's exactly the way you want it. Tomatillos are starting to get charred looking, and you're just gonna have to scrape all that up.
The foil and coming off the tomatillos. These are almost ready.
Alrighty.
Yay.
We've got a couple of onions, probably about 6 cloves of garlic. Now this is for the big, huge pan. If I was just gonna do like a regular size 4 or 5 quart Dutch oven that most people have, I would probably use 1 onion, maybe 1 carrot, a couple of garlic cloves, maybe a third of these potatoes. But since I'm doing a huge one, I'm gonna do a couple of onions at least, and a whole bunch of garlic, and all of these little potatoes right here. So, we're gonna get all of these chopped up. You can chop them up as big or as small as however you like it in your soup. I like it smaller, Heath likes it bigger, so I do it smaller for me. So I'm gonna chop all these up and mince up my garlic, and then I'm going to start sauteing my onions and garlic and carrots in some oil. I'm not gonna cut up the potatoes yet so they don't turn brown, but as soon as I get that going over there, then I'll add a little bit of broth, and then I'll cut up these potatoes, get them in there so they start cooking, and then whenever Heath decides he wants to come back in and work again, he's got all of the tomatoes, peppers, all of this has been sweated out. He's going to skin them and cut them, and then he's going to get our chicken. We have a smoked chicken. He's going to get all those pieces off the bone, and then we'll get it in there, and then we'll start seasoning. So anyway, so we are just going to start chopping away. We are going to start doing a little bit of cooking. Got my carrots, my onions, my garlic all right here. We're just gonna put a little bit of vegetable oil just on enough to coat the bottom. Let it heat up a bit. And we're just gonna saute this a little bit just to soften it up a tiny bit in the oil. It's gonna cook in the broth for a long, long time, but we just kind of want to do a little bit of seasoning to this as it is cooking. So, almost there. All right, it is good. So, not too long, just a basic softening it up. Breaking everything up, toasting the garlic a little bit, softening the onions just a little bit. Now it always helps if you add a little spice, a little at a time as you go. I'm gonna just sprinkle a little cumin in there. Shake in a little pepper. Okay, we'll add a lot more later. Just a touch of salt right now. Stir it up. There, now you can smell garlic, onion, spices. Smells a little better. Okay, maybe a little bit of Mexican oregano in there. Get that smell going. Make sure you use Mexican oregano. Look for Mexican oregano. It's a lot different than just regular dried oregano in the spice aisle. Usually you can find the Mexican oregano in little packages near the dried peppers and international foods. Sometimes it's by the produce on a little stand, but that's where I find the Mexican oregano that we use all the time in any kind of Mexican cooking that we do. All right, I think the garlics are nice and toasted. So now we are gonna actually start making soup. Just so that this stuff doesn't char, we're gonna add a portion. I'm gonna probably end up using a whole bunch of broth, probably around 16 cups, because I'm making probably 3 or 4 times more than a normal person would make in a regular size pan. So if I was making this in a regular size pan, I would probably put in like 2 cups of broth just to let it start getting hot and simmering and soaking up the spices. And total, you might use 4 to 5 cups total for a soup in a smaller Dutch oven like this. But this way, at least it starts getting spiced and keeps the garlic and onion from scorching. And I'm just gonna put it on low and let it start to simmer to start softening up the onions and all that. So I've got my potatoes, my low red potatoes all chopped up. If you want to just get 1 or 2 of the bigger red potatoes and chop those to whatever size you like, that's fine too. One thing to note is this soup can be low carb. So if anybody that's eating it with you, anybody's on keto or low carb, you can just omit the potatoes and it's just as good without the potatoes. I think they're just as good without the potatoes, but if you're low carb, just keep the potatoes out and then it's just meat, veggies, and broth. And if you're on keto, omit the potatoes and just when you're serving it to yourself, just add some sliced up avocados, maybe a dollop of daisy, add that as your fat to it, and it's a perfect keto meal. All right, now we are working on the veggies.
Okay. Start with the tomatillos. So we just
Doing regular bite-sized pieces, as big or as small as you like. He's basically just coring out the center. It's not a little harder than a tomato, but not quite like an apple. So bigger, smaller, whatever. Just get the hard little core.
It'll break down in the soup real good.
Cut around it.
Yep.
There we go.
Easy breezy. 20 to go.
Okay, now the tomato.
So we're just taking the skin off. A little bit of skin, still fine. Same thing, we just want to cut it into smaller sections and take this hard core out. In the bowl it goes.
All right. Okay, this is the last of the tomatoes and tomatillos, and you can see we're getting a big old juicy bunch in there, and you want to save all that juice. It adds a lot of flavor to the broth.
As well as the reserve from the bowl.
There we go. Less broth you'll have to buy too.
All the vitamins.
All right, now we're just gonna dump this in and just let it start simmering in the pot like everything else that's in there. We're gonna season it up again in just a second, but we are going to get going on the peppers.
Peppers. Here we go.
All right, here we go on the peppers. We've got a poblano there, and they've been steaming for an hour or so. They don't have to steam that long, but just cover them up, let them steam, and then the...
Cool enough so you can handle them. Right.
And then the skin pretty much just kind of rips off. You can take out as many of the seeds as you want, or you can leave them in. Totally up to you. And there is an Anaheim.
Getting a little bit of skin left over is fine.
And of course you will want to wear gloves on this part.
Or don't touch your face for 2 days.
Don't touch your face for a long time or anything else. And just make sure you yank off the little stem part.
There's a little root of seeds in there, so just carve a
Take
few
out
out.
as much as you want. And there's a serrano, so you don't have to put any serranos in it.
These have peaks.
It'll just make it pretty spicy. We add quite a few jalapenos and a couple of serranos usually, but if I was making it for guests that I did not know how much heat they could handle, I would probably just use the poblanos and the Anaheims and maybe one or two little jalapenos. But the flavor for the green chilies for the stew comes from the Anaheims and the poblanos. The jalapenos don't need to be there, the serranos don't need to be there, they're just there for added heat.
You see there, there's a little bit of skin still on it, which is absolutely fine. It works in the soup. Then you can take it and just pop the head off. Try to grab up some of those stems. And there you go, it's ready.
And then slice them just the same into little bite-sized, however you want them to go. And just like the others, save all the juice that you can.
There's one of each pepper and a few more to go.
Just finish off the peppers and then we will be getting down to the end.
There we go.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about chicken. We have got a smoked whole chicken here that we did last weekend, and Heath's just going to peel it all apart and chop it up and throw it in there. It's already cooked. Now, you don't have to have a smoked chicken. I will say that smoked chicken is the best in this soup, but any kind of chicken will do. You could have like a leftover half of a rotisserie chicken, maybe a couple of baked chicken breast or broiled chicken thighs or whatever you had left over from dinner last week. You can just skin it, take it off the bones, chop it into little pieces, and throw it in the soup. So you don't have to have any special chicken. You can use light meat, dark meat, combination of, and just make sure it's cooked and chop it into bite-sized pieces, and that is it. Okay, we've got all the peppers in. We've chopped up the chicken and we've got all the chicken in. Now the trick is just letting it simmer. It doesn't have to come to a boil. Oops, doesn't have to come to really a boil. Just let it simmer until the potatoes and the carrots get as soft as you like. I usually let it simmer for hours because it smells so good. And I'll taste it here in another hour and see if it needs more cumin or salt or anything like that. And then I'll probably, this is a lot of veggies and a lot of meat. Heath likes it more brothy. So I will probably add another carton of chicken broth to make it a little soupier for him. Thin it out a little bit, and then I'll have to add a little more salt and stuff just to adjust the flavors, but you can make it as brothy or as thick soup as you would like. So you just add the broth to your own personal taste, add the salt to your own personal taste, let it simmer until the vegetables are the way you like them. Everything in there is cooked basically by now, since we kind of sauteed the onions, and and once the potatoes are done, it's basically ready. But the longer you let it simmer, honestly, the better it gets. So Just let it go. We will send a picture to you when we are eating. And we hope you have enjoyed our very first cooking class. Yay! Okay, bye-bye.